never think, I never know. I'm stuck and left alone. I've been lost, I've been fine. My cause is not defined. Won't you kiss me? Won't you play? Won't you try me? Ain't no way I could deny you, I could stray. Won't you kiss me? Ain't no way. Want you, come and try me now, so quick. Come and try me now. I was never left alone.
Turner!
I never think, I never know. I'm stuck and left alone. I've been lost, I've been fine. My cause is not defined. Won't you kiss me? Won't you play? Won't you try me? Ain't no way I could deny you, I could stray. Will you kiss me? Ain't no way. I was never left alone.
What's going on, everybody? How y'all doing? How y'all doing? How y'all doing on this lovely pre-Friday? You know, this Thursday for y'all, but it's Friday for me. It's doing absolutely well right now. You know what I'm saying? It's doing absolutely well right now. You know, on this lovely Thursday for y'all, but Friday for me. So from the future's doing pretty well. So how was y'all week so far? You know, this hump day's been going in. We're going to get into it just in a minute, just letting everybody roll in. You know what I'm saying? We still got some time before the stream officially starts, so I want to chop it up with the chat. We got some people in here. As usual, we got the producer, as all, you know, Char Willie. Thank you for coming through, as always. RVSOP, your JV. How you doing, JV? Thanks for coming through, showing some support here. We got our lovely lady Vonda, always showing the support. Got General Q. What's going on, Q, man? How's everything over there? How's everything in them streets? And we got Bomb Cherry. What's going on? You know what I'm saying? Lovely, lovely, lovely. So, you know what I'm saying, to everybody in the chat. So how was your week? You know what I'm saying? What did y'all do? You know what I'm saying, as far as this week is concerned. It's been, you know, the news has been very, very crazy to say the least. It's a lot of things going on, but I'm not going to talk about too much of the regular stuff that's been popping off. Like, I'm going to touch on a couple of those things, but there's something looming because I like to be in my crystal ball into the future, you know, and in that crystal ball, I see some things actually happening in the future that we need to be mindful of and address. and what's coming down the pike. And hopefully you guys can plan and associate for yourself. So, so hopefully, you know what I'm saying? You take these articles, you put them together, you see the connections that are being laid, and you can, you know what I'm saying, you can make plans accordingly, because not knowing a lot of times put us in a bad predicament. A lot of times we do count on the news to give us information, but it's buried behind or underneath a lot of foolishness and debauchery. Um, and we get like goldfish, we forget things. So, but my week's been pretty good. It was raining for the last couple of days. This spring weather's been kicking. Pretty nice though. It's been pretty mild. It's not been too hot, not been too humid over here on my neck, my side of the world. But I heard y'all had y'all finally went through a cold snap, and it's getting warm. And as it getting warm, people are starting to kick their head out and peek their heads out and go out more. But this has caused some problems with the rise of these cases and talking about vaccinations and things of that nature. So be safe out there, protect yourself. You know what I'm saying? Do your taxes. You know what I'm saying? Because that was an extension on that. There was an extension. What's going on, Callie Jane? So there was an extension on that. So you got until May 15th, other than April 15th. So you got until May 15th. So this is it's Friday for me. So this is the last day of the month. So you basically got 15 days, you know what I'm saying, to file them taxes. You know what I'm saying? So, from what I've heard, there's another stimulus coming. For like mothers and families per child. I think it's $300 per child. That's coming in like July or something. Biden did an address to Congress and stuff. So he's talking about that extra money and things of that nature. So Vonda said this week's good so far. I have no complaints. That is good to hear. We love to hear good news. We love to hear good news. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, this is as far as it. So we're gonna get into our first thing, our first article for the day. Let me pull this up. Okay, so we're gonna talk about Joe Biden, because he's talking about police reform, and everybody's making a big thing about what Tim Scott said. He's a Republican. Only really, it's not that many black Republicans, but he's a Republican, and he's talking about America isn't racist. There's systemic racism doesn't exist, and then Lindsey Graham got behind him and said the same thing, and blah blah blah. But we're going to talk about if racism isn't systemic. You know what I'm saying? This is everybody included. This is overall or whatever. Then you wouldn't have the president talking about police reform. Which is a part of the systemic problem of the racism. That's just one part. We can talk about the housing market, education. We can talk about a multitude of things. But we just going to, focus on this real quick, and let's get it in. You know what I'm saying? Appreciate y'all for joining, being around, and supporting the channel. You know what I mean? So hit the like button as you enter, and here we go. So this right here, Biden to Congress. What I'm saying? Biden to Congress. Passed police reform bill by anniversary of George Floyd's death. President Biden urged Congress on Wednesday to pass the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, a sweeping police reform bill before the upcoming one-year anniversary of Floyd's death under the knee of then Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. During his address to a joint session of Congress, Biden asked lawmakers to work together to find consensus on the bill, which passed the House last summer but did not make it out of the Senate. Floyd was killed on May 25th, 2020. Chauvin knelt on Floyd's neck until he was asphyxiated, while Chauvin and two other now former officers restrained him during an arrest Chauvin was convicted last week of murder and manslaughter in Floyd's death and will be sentenced in June. In his speech, Biden called for the conversation with Floyd's daughter, Gianna, before Floyd's funeral. So, and this is what he said: as I knelt down and talked to her so we could talk, she said to me, "Daddy changed the world." Biden said, after the conviction of George Floyd's murder, uh, we can see how right she was if we had the courage to act. Now, there's been several other people that passed away. Breonna Taylor was before George Floyd. Ahmaud Arbery also, and in that case, they're adding to the two individuals. They're adding civil rights, basically a charge against his civil rights. So, with that being said, this bill was last year. It went through the House and it stopped in the Senate, but the Senate did and the House did pass a bill for the Asians. So they did pass a bill just recently. So I don't think this should have a problem being passed. And if it does have a problem, then we need to readdress why. We need to readdress why, take the proper avenues. But the link to this article is in the description box below. All articles, all videos that you see, the link is in the description box below. So, speaking of which, we're going to move on to the next one. We're going to move on to our next one. And the next one is Minnesota lawmakers. Okay, so now every time a police officer goes to trial, it costs the citizens money. Major trial of this magnitude costs the citizens money. It costs them a lot of money, a lot of taxpayer dollars that's being taken out of the community because the systemic racism that they say don't exist. It exists because it's costing the taxpayers money, whether they're convicted or not. So Minnesota Governor Tim Walz approved a $7.8 million for the Chauvin trial costs. So that's just one trial, right? This is how much that trial costs. The state of Minnesota. Now they got another trial that's going to cost some more money, and this is a $7.8 million. That's the cost for the resources allocated for the trial, not to mention the money that they had to pay the family. So technically, this cop cost the state of Minnesota $34.8 million. This one cop. This one police officer, ex-police officer, cost the state of Minnesota $34.8 million as of right now. We're not even going to talk about the other three officers that was involved, right? Because you had two officers that were on his legs and stuff, and then you had one officer that was addressing the crowd, right, with his back turned, and he was Asian. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz signed into law Tuesday $7.8 million in additional funding to cover the law enforcement costs incurred during the Derek Chauvin trial. The big picture, the measure, which passed both chambers with bipartisan support earlier in the day, marked a rare agreement in the divided legislature. Sure. Let me see. It was opposed by some Democrats who have raised concerns about funding law enforcement without additional police accountability measures. The details: the bill will reimburse Minnesota for the State Patrol Department of Natural Resources conservation officers and the other law enforcement officers who came from out of state, in addition to the trial involving officers responding to the protest over the police shooting of Daunte Wright in the Brooklyn Center. Of note, the separate measure to set aside up to $35 million to reimburse the city of Minneapolis for trial security costs, including money owed to the neighboring law enforcement departments that agreed to help, stalled earlier in the session. So basically, somebody got to pay. And this is uproar. So now you see why you got to attack the money. You have to attack the money. And when I mean you got to attack the money, you got to attack the money. Okay? So this is what's going on, and this is relevant. You know what I'm saying? Now, as we move forward, and we're talking about, this is the police reform section of this, because this was the news that, we were hearing about with the all three verdicts guilty. Our Supreme Elder DJMuziq did a segment on that on CRBJ just yesterday, and with his co-host JustaskChar or Char Willie, and he was playing with the Attorney General was saying about, they couldn't actually charge a civil rights violation, or they had to prove it, and someone had to get up on the stand and actually say it as a witness so they could prove that and certain things. So please go check that out. If you want to listen to it, its entirety, please go check that out on Mixcloud. But with that being said, is that this is costing money. Before, they used to just do whatever, right? Because they wouldn't even charge the police officer, right? Because it costs money. Big trials cost money, right? It's taxpayer dollars, right? So that's another incentive for them not to do it. But when you have something that's so blatant as this is costing money, right? So the more that they're being held accountable, the more money that's going to cost, the more that people are going to take note of and hold people accountable. I'm sorry to say this, but this is how life is. You have to attack the money. You have to attack the money. You attack the money, people will start listening. Because America is a capitalist society. You are American, and you, by proxy, are a capitalist. So this is basically what it is. Now we're going to get into a video real quick. So let's go ahead and play this.
Uprising against systemic racism and police brutality, it's hard not to keep thinking about something that I've seen on a bunch of protest signs in many different cities. Imagine all the many terrible things that have happened that just weren't caught on camera. Particularly when we see disturbing stories like what just happened in Wilmington, North Carolina, which we only know about basically through sheer fluke, because a sergeant conducting an audit stumbled onto a video that had been accidentally recorded by a Wilmington police officer, and the police department, to its credit, told the public what they found. In the video, 3 longtime veteran Wilmington officers who've been on the job since the late 1990s, think about that, decades on the force, are heard saying some truly vile and racist things, with one of them flat out calling for a race war. This is a police officer who's been in there for decades. Quote, "We're just going to go out and start slaughtering them effing N-words. I can't wait. God, I can't wait." The officer adding that a civil war is needed to, quote, and I quote him here, "wipe them off the effing map. That'll put them back about 4 or 5 generations." All 3 officers.
Now, this is the police department, right? This is the police department. These are 3 officers in the police department. They were just stupid enough to get caught on a recording that they were having. So when you hear the Republicans say, or people say that systemic racism does not exist. What is systemic racism? It's racism of people that are in power that are a part of the system. Military, doctors, lawyers, and things of that nature. But let me continue to play this.
Officers have now been fired for misconduct. The city's new police chief, Donnie Williams, making the announcement yesterday.
Now look at the police chief. He's the new police chief. So the Gray Faulkner Initiative, or the initiative, the initiative does work, because we need more of us in these places. We need us in the military. We need us in the police force, because we can start to push back and we can police ourselves. And no one's going to police you better than each other. So, and he's the newly appointed you know, police chief, right? So let's give that brother a round of applause. And he has to sit up there and he has to deal with this fallout.
When I first learned of these conversations, I was shocked, saddened, and disgusted. There is no place for this behavior in our agency or our city, and it will not be tolerated.
That was his first day on the job, one of his first actions as a head of police in that town. Now, there are so many ways this is disturbing, they're basically uncountable, but most striking to me is the resonance and meaning of these violent racist words in this particular place, Wilmington, North Carolina.
Now, he's about to drop some history real quick. So please perk up your ears, because if I say it, a lot of people won't believe it. If I say what's about to happen, so I'm going to let this guy with the glasses, the palm-colored person, basically tell you. Because if he says it, it got to be true, right? All right, cool. Black coffee, white filter, got it.
It's a city that is in many ways a perfect representation of the trajectory of racial injustice in America. Because back in the late 1800s, after the Civil War and in Reconstruction, Wilmington was a thriving, fairly well-integrated town racially. That was thanks to the post-Civil War project of Reconstruction, which used the federal government to actively seek to integrate freemen and women as full citizens, to give them rights and more. And then came what was arguably the only pure coup d'etat in U.S. history, when a white supremacist mob violently wrenched power, overthrowing the city government, killing at least 60 African Americans, slaughtering them, wrenching power back with terrorist, white supremacist, fascist violence to regain white supremacy, a key moment in the destruction of this nation's project of racial equality and reconstruction. And the system those racists built, that is a system upon which we now stand. To the point where in the year 2020, Wilmington police officers are fantasizing about a race war where they could shoot black people that would put black Americans back about 4 or 5 generations. Back.
So what does that say? Right? Right? What does that tell you? Well, that tells you a couple of things, right? And when I mean that tells you a couple of things is what's going on here is what it tells you a couple of things is this, is that systemic racism exists. It has been in existence since the founding of the country. Sounds like January 6th to me. You know, and this was back in the 1800s, 1898, right? So when they say things about black people lazy now, but every time we try to build something or do something or whatever, this is what happens, right? And so it's a systemic problem. It's a systemic problem, right? It has to be, right? So how do we handle the systemic problem? Well, the first thing is you have to realize that there is a problem. And when you have people like ourselves that look like us get on national television and come out of their mouth and basically says that systemic racism doesn't exist, or you have the vice president say that America isn't racist. Yeah, she said it. But then there's racist parts, there's racist things that go on in America. Well, if America isn't racist and then there's racist things that go on in the country, then of course America will be racist. So what are you saying? But I'll leave it up to you guys to think about it and come to your own conclusions, because these are only things that and evidence that I would like to put up there. So now we're off of that. Now we're getting into some other news. Okay, so now we're moving on to another thing, right? So just recently in California, I don't know what's been going on lately in California, right? But I think a day ago or so, there was, they said it was a mass shooting, but it's been this thing that's been going on lately in California, where well, not in California, just in the nation, where it's been these multiple killings, right? Like instead of just one place, the killers moved around, right? We saw that happen down in Atlanta with the what was going on. We saw a lot of mass shootings happen. So, suspect in deadly shooting spree led LA cops on a 3-hour chase that ended in a shootout on the freeway. A suspect wanted in a deadly drive-by shooting in LA was killed on Tuesday following a shootout. The man was suspected of killing 2 people and injuring another in 3 drive-by shootings. Police said the suspect took officers on a 3-hour chase before ending in a fatal standoff. The suspect wanted in 3 deadly drive-by shootings in Los Angeles was killed by police earlier Tuesday morning following a near 3-hour police chase that ended with a shootout on the freeway. Now, the police did their job as much as they could, okay? This is a point where deadly force is needed because the suspect was not coming quietly. He was killing, he was just doing too much, right? So, you don't blame the police. I am even killed. Listen, I am an even killed person. I believe in balance. So if I'm going to show you one thing, I'm going to show you something else on the other end of the spectrum, so you can make an assessment. Because I think a lot of times when people deliver information, they only deliver it from one end of the spectrum. Okay, so there can be 2 things can be fact at the same time. Okay, so as officers pursued the suspect in the shootings, they drove along the 60 and 57 freeways before stopping on the westbound 91 freeway. The suspect first opened fire on officers, and they responded with their own gunfire around 5 a.m. after deploying tear gas. Right, so they shot tear gas at the guy. Right, they got the suspect. They shot tear gas. Then he fired back at him, and then they fired on him. So they tried to take him. So they tried to take him. So of course I'm going to have visual aids. So here we go.
Update from that scene to this image. Take a look at this new image just into our newsroom moments ago, showing the suspect that was involved in that standoff. You can see him looking right into the camera there from behind the wheel. This was captured right around 4:30 this morning as it was all going down. That suspected killer being tied now to 3 separate shootings that took place near downtown LA.
Yeah, take a look at this map. It shows the 3 different crime scenes. At least 2 people we know were killed. Eyewitness News reporter Marco Robles is live at the scene near 7th and Figueroa and has the very latest.
Yeah, Rachel, this appears to be the last of the 3 shooting scenes that occurred around 1 this morning. As you mentioned, we are at 7th and Fig here in downtown Los Angeles, and we've been looking all morning at that black Escalade. The driver of that SUV appearing to be one of the victims killed in this shooting spree. There are bullet holes in both the passenger and the driver's side window. Police, of course, they had this whole area shut down for their investigation. Another man was killed at 28th and Figueroa in a Starbucks drive-thru. He was driving a blue Mustang. The 3rd shooting occurred near Fig and Exposition near the USC area. 1 man was injured in that shooting. All 3 shootings appeared to occur within 10 minutes of each other, and this all spanned about 3 miles. There does not appear to be a link between the victims in these shootings, making it seem very possible that these were completely random shootings. So frightening, the suspect just shooting indiscriminately. Again, we have 2 victims dead, another injured between these 3 different crime scenes along Figueroa, and we are waiting on more details from the LAPD this morning as this remains a developing investigation.
All right. Well, I would like to say when police do a good job, they did the best that they could. They did a good job. They went through the proper checks. They did the proper engagement. So give those officers that responded a round of applause. being a person that was in the military and things like that, talking to Marines and stuff like that, taking a person's life isn't something that you want to do. Normal people don't want to do that. It's not a thing that you want to do. So they went through the proper checks. So, like I said, I can't tell you to join a police force or tell you to join the military without giving you some good examples on how to conduct yourself if you're going to be in that line of work. And these officers conducted themselves properly. The officers previous to the fact that I brought up and mentioned, they didn't conduct themselves properly. So when we do things, we need to bring that about. And they had him on video. They knew what the suspect looked like. He looked like a killer. He looked like he was loose in the head. So he didn't look very, mentally stable. If you look at how that man, whatever he was doing, he wanted to die, and he was doing something. So I don't know, but we he's dead, and heart goes out to the victims and their families and the person that's injured. So now we're going to talk about our lovely person, the one that's on the thumbnail here. We're going to get into Mr. Rudy Giuliani. If y'all haven't heard Mr. Giuliani, his business and his home was raided. So his home was raided. Yeah, Mr. Giuliani. And if you remember who Mr. Giuliani is, that's Trump's. That was Savage 4-5, or President Trump's lawyer that was representing him, especially in that whole thing where the election was rigged and it was stolen. Okay, so Rudy Giuliani, lawyer, said the feds raided his Manhattan apartment, and it is a clear example of corrupt double standard. So that's Giuliani right there. So the FBI raided Rudy Giuliani's Manhattan apartment Wednesday in connection with a probe into his Ukraine dealings. Now, remember, if you don't know who Rudy Giuliani is, other than being a lawyer, he was the ex-mayor of New York. Giuliani's attorney said it is a corrupt double standard that feds didn't execute a search warrant against Hunter Biden as well. So the feds had a search warrant. The DOJ greenlighted a search warrant against Giuliani following Merrick Garland's confirmation as Attorney General. Former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani attorney said federal investigators raided his Manhattan apartment is a clear example of corrupt double standard. In a statement he released Wednesday night, federal investigators executed a search warrant and seized electronic devices from Giuliani's home earlier Wednesday in connection with a criminal probe into Giuliani's dealings in the Ukraine. The New York Times reported in October 2019, prosecutors accused two of Giuliani's associates, Lev Paredes and Igor Fruman. Igor, why is everybody from the UK? There's always an Igor. Okay. Newman helped dig up dirt on Biden and his father, current President Joe Biden, ahead of the 2020 election. Paredes and Fruman were both arrested on charges of campaign finance violations as part of a conspiracy to funnel foreign money into U.S. elections. Okay, so if you want to read the rest of this article, the link is in the description. You know what I'm saying? Former mayor of NYC. Yep. So, but we have visual aid, so let's bring it up.
Actually happened.
We'll bring it up.
Breaking news out of Manhattan right now. The FBI has just raided the apartment of former New York mayor and close Trump confidant Rudy Giuliani. NBC News national security correspondent Ken Delaney joins us now with the latest. Ken, what do we know about that raid? What actually happened?
Morgan, we know very little about the details, but the bottom line here is that the FBI convinced a federal judge that there was probable cause to believe a crime had been committed, and that the evidence supporting the commission of that crime was present in Rudy Giuliani's home on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. It's not clear. NBC News is not reporting what exactly has been seized in this raid, but the New York Times is saying investigators seized Giuliani's electronic devices, which is significant because obviously a lot of communications and evidence can be found on a person's electronic devices. If viewers recall, this is a long-running federal investigation of the former president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, that really stemmed from the impeachment inquiry. It actually stemmed from a federal investigation into two Soviet-born men, Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman, who are facing unrelated charges and go on trial in a few months. They were working with Giuliani to gather dirt on Joe Biden in Ukraine. And it's now become clear, Morgan, the U.S. intelligence community has said that this was a Russian disinformation effort to interfere in the election, to discredit Joe Biden. And Rudy Giuliani was enmeshed in it. But what he's being investigated for, we are told, is whether he violated lobbying disclosure laws, particularly foreign lobbying disclosure laws, whether he was paid by Ukrainians and lobbied the Trump administration. And the Wall Street Journal has reported that the federal government is looking at his banking record. So a lot of legal hot water for Rudy Giuliani.
Y'all heard it. Rudy Giuliani's in a lot of hot water, right? So this is Trump's lawyer, right? And he's the ex-mayor of New York City. And they got the electronic devices. And a lot of times you think with your electronic device, as long as you delete something, it's gone forever, but not really. The memory is sitting in the cache. So they do have a way. Pretty much the only way for you to basically totally get rid of information is if you pretty much factory reset your phone. And even that is, they can still kind of in some way retrieve it, especially if you put it up into a cloud. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, they want the money. That's what, when the Fed, it all comes down to money once again, right? It all comes down to money. Is finding dirt on a political candidate against the law? Nope. Is someone giving you that information kind of against the law? Nope. But when it comes in swaying an election where you're promising them favors, where you're going to put another country first, or if they get elected, you're going to get X, Y, and Z, now we get into another thing. And this is called foreign lobby, and they're not supposed to influence an election to that magnitude. So, and Giuliani, you can tell he's got some form of dementia or something, because he was always up basically snitching on himself on a lot of these interviews that he was doing on Fox News. He would go on Fox News and pretty much throw everybody underneath the bus by opening his mouth. And that kind of shows you if he was acting like this then, man, imagine what he was doing as mayor in New York when he was kind of not as loose in the head or loose with his mouth as he is now. We had a lot of the technology we have now. Back then, he would probably wouldn't make it as mayor, but maybe or maybe not, So that's that. We're going to get into this real quick, and we're going to play these sponsors. We're going to come right back for the last half of the show. So I appreciate y'all standing by, being with me. This is a little bit more PC. It's not my rants. The show was taken over by Reverend Pimp Breezy for the last 2 weeks. So we're getting back into the swing of things of being a little bit more PC and a little bit more grounded and a little bit more straightforward. So here we go. Let's get a word from our sponsors and our affiliate channels and platforms that Nick said he's not senile, just arrogant. That's that systemic racism, huh? That's that systemic racism, huh? I know it's right.
Hi, this is Char Willie from the JustaskChar Advice channel on YouTube. Join me every Friday night at 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time for an open panel discussion. You'll find myself, Classic Ruby, and others giving our honest opinion, giving several examples, and problem solving. If you have an email for advice, you can send it to JustaskChar@gmail.com. Hope to see you soon. Peace.
Join Char Willie and Classic Ruby for their radio show, Keep the Beat. They broadcast every Wednesday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on CRBJ, Classic R&B Jams. There are discussions of the songs, and that can take you back down memory lane. If you missed the live broadcast, no worries. Replays are uploaded on Mixcloud. So, follow JustaskChar Advice Channel on Mixcloud, and you will receive the notification when these broadcasts are uploaded.
Hey, folks, it's your nighttime. It's your right time DJMuziq, and welcome to Classic R&B Jams Radio. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, playing all the hits from the decades, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. Right here, Classic R&B Jams Radio. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, soulful sound all around town.
All right. So we have 12 likes on the stream. I appreciate it. Appreciate all of y'all. So because we have those likes, we got to do what we do best. Let's bring it up on the screen. Turner. Let's get it one more time. Turner. 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 Turner, 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 Turner. Say, all right. So 12 Turners, you know what I'm saying, for the people, for liking the stream. Every time you like the stream, I'll periodically through the segments of the stream ask how many likes. And we had 12 up until the halfway marker. So I'll ask again how many that we have, and then I'll hit the Turner button. Shout out to our esteemed brother in Cerulean for the inside joke with the Turner. You know what I'm saying? So now we're bringing it down to this portion. All right. So there's something going on right now in Asia, because I'm in Asia, so I need to talk about Asia. I've talked about the U.S. I talked about some global stuff with, you know, the Ukraine and stuff like that, but I'm going to talk about Asia, right? I'm in Asia, so I'm going to inform y'all of what's going on over here. There's some things going on right now in Myanmar. Burma. They had a coup happen. This has been going on. I know you guys aren't, really informed about it because, it's on the other side of the world, and it doesn't affect you to that point, but it will, and I'll bring it in on my closing thoughts on why these things affect you. Okay? And why this hasn't been put on Front Street or in your face in the media as much. In the U.S. Because it's not a problem for you right now. But don't believe that the powers that be aren't going to let you know that it's not a problem, right? Because the last time they had a problem like this in Asia, it was Vietnam, right? So here we go. All right, there we go. So, Myamar coup brings war back to remote frontier. Troops scuttling around the steep hilltops of this remote mountain frontier have haven't been seen for 25 years, but Myanmar coup has brought war back to the remote Southeast Asian region. It is sending a new generation of villagers in both Myanmar and Thailand running for their lives from bullets and bombs, including Amin, a villager from Mae Hong Son province in Thailand. I fled my house around 4:55 a.m. yesterday. The clash that happened was so loud and everyone was scared. I brought my whole family to a safer spot and I came back to watch the situation. From his vantage point, he's watching heavy clashes between Myanmar's oldest rebel forces and its military. Now, if you don't know, Myanmar's military basically did a coup because they decided to have a government. They did general election. They had democracy. They insurrected the government, took it over. They've been killing protesters and stuff like that. And the rebel forces that were in the mountains, the warlords that had their different sections and stuff, they were backing this newfound government because they were going to get a seat at the table. And the military didn't like that, and then they wanted to take it over, and they imprisoned the prime minister that was in power. And this woman was actually locked up for a long period of time, right? She was in house confinement and stuff. So she was a political prisoner. She finally gets out and things of that nature. So with this being said, this has been going on. Now, Myanmar or Burma borders Thailand, right? And Cambodia and Vietnam and stuff like this. This is very important because I'm explaining this to you. This is very important. Okay? So, an army border outpost cracks in the distance ethnic minority Karen insurgents, here we go with the Karen, with the Karen National Union. They got a national union. Karen got a national union. All right, I'm sorry. It's an inside joke. All right, sorry. It's an outside joke. Sorry. You know what I'm saying? They got a outside union. So with this being said, is the group and other autonomy-seeking ethnic forces based in the frontier regions are backing the largely city-based pro-democracy opponents of the junta that seized power on February 1st. Now, this happened on February 1st. I've been watching news for a while. The Myanmar military has held this outpost since 1995, but new tensions are settling alike old rivalries. The KNU agreed to a ceasefire in 2012, ending an insurgency that began soon after Myanmar gained independence in 1948. So they've been fighting since 1948. Now war has returned to Myanmar's military has greater might from the air. It's launched repeated airstrikes against the KNU position, sending some 15,000 villagers fleeing into the forest. Several thousand briefly seeking refuge on the Thai side of the border. Thailand says it is here to provide humanitarian help, but it is staying out of the fight. Okay. So, this is very important, right? And you're probably asking, well, why is this important? Well, what happened after Vietnam? After Vietnam, you had a major influx of refugees from Southeast Asia, Thai, Hmong, things of that nature, right? These are generation building. If you have this war since 1948 and you think about all these things, you're going to get a major influx. Now, you're looking at the thing where they're pushing this whole thing about the anti-Asian hate and stuff like that. These people that are coming in, they want a better life. A lot of these villagers and stuff like that, they will basically migrate into Thailand. They will migrate into other places. They'll migrate into other spaces, other countries to seek refuge, right? And those people that are seeking refuge, those people are the people that people will take advantage of. Now, why are we talking about this? Well, let's bring this back up on screen, and I'll add this to the stream.
Forces of the armed ethnic group, the Karen National Union, the KNU, claim to have captured an outpost belonging to the Burmese army close to the Thailand border with Myanmar. Witnesses in Thailand said heavy fighting had erupted before sunrise. Karen National Union, KNU forces, had reportedly burnt down the army outpost. I got the latest from our Southeast Asia correspondent, Jonathan Head.
Well, there's no denying what happened because it was very visible from the Thai side. That post was very isolated. It was cut off from the rest of the Myanmar army. And in fact, the soldiers there had begun to depend on Thai soldiers to leave them food. They didn't even have enough food, so they were very vulnerable. The Karen National Union moved in the very early hours this morning, around 5 o'clock. People on the Thai side heard all the gunfire, some louder explosions too. It suggests there was quite a bit of fighting. And then saw the various huts that have been put there by the Burmese to accommodate their soldiers being set on fire. The Thai side's confirmed that's what's happened. It looks like the KNU has taken the post. But I think what's important is it reminds us that there has been continued fighting in Karen State over the past month. Often the Myanmar military who are defending what the Karen National Union say are encroachments. They believe the army has essentially expanded its footprint under the cover of a 9-year-old ceasefire and is trying to hold on to that. And the Myanmar military has been using air power, including ground attack aircraft. It's been bombing villages from the air. It's been using artillery as well, with thousands of people displaced. So this is an ongoing conflict, and it's linked into the larger conflict in Myanmar because the Karen National Union has been the strongest supporter among the ethnic armies, the various ethnic armies in Myanmar, of the civilian opposition. It's sheltering, we think, maybe 2,000 people who fled from the cities. So when the Myanmar military goes after them, they have that in mind as well.
And just briefly, Jonathan, after the coup on the 1st of February, have things escalated significantly, or has this been simmering for many months?
Well, now this is tied into a broader conflict, Tim, and that's really what's happening, which is very problematic for the military because it's moved a lot of units into the cities to try and contain the opposition it's facing to its coup, but it does need them in these ethnic areas too. Now, so far, a lot of the ethnic armies have given verbal support to the new national unity government, the parallel government set up by the MPs elected in last November's election. But the Karen are really the only ones we can see who are giving very active support. If those other ethnic armies start to engage the Myanmar military as well, it is possible it might find itself very overstretched, and people are waiting to see whether that unity government, which includes the ethnic armies and a promise of a federal system, whether that turns into a much more powerful armed challenge to the generals who now rule Myanmar.
Okay, so with that being said, this is a big thing that's happening. Now, people have been leaving Myanmar for a while, Burma and a lot of Southeast Asian countries. They've actually been going to a lot of other Asian countries. Like where I live at now is a lot of Southeast Asians from Burma, Myanmar, Vietnam, Indonesia, Cambodia, things of that nature, right? But there's been this thing that's been actually going on for a while in Burma, in Southeast Asia, because a lot of times when people are refugees, people take advantage of it. We see it all over the news. We see it a lot of time. You know what I'm saying? We see it a lot of times. So there's been this thing going on. And I read in the news that this lady, they're from Singapore, and they had a maid, and she was from Burma, from Myanmar, and this woman died. They treated her horribly. They locked her. It's been this case that's been going on for a while, right? And we talk about this Asian hate thing, but the prototypical Asians that people are always putting up, like the like the Chinese and the Japanese and the Koreans, but we keep forgetting about the ones that don't necessarily look like your prototypical Asians to a certain degree. We're talking about the Filipinos, we're talking about the Indonesians, the Thai, the Hmong, we're talking about the Indians, the Pakistanis, the Afghanis, and even Russians. Russians are considered Asian. So what I'm basically saying is this is a thing where we, as you know, have to understand that this has been going on. So people in humanity have not been treating each other fairly, and then we're talking about a different race of people. And these are people systemically, because systemic racism is a thing of society as a whole, right? As the world as a whole, because you say Asians and you group them all in one lump sum, whereas that's not the case. I live in Asia. That's not the case, because there's a difference in culture and ethnicity between a Japanese and a person from Myanmar or Burmese or something like that. So let's bring this up, and I'm going to, because we don't talk about things without bringing receipts, and it's in, the links are in the description. Woman who starved and abused her Myanmar maid to death seeks to avoid life imprisonment. Seeks to avoid. This is the lady in question. She starved and beat this maid from Myanmar to death, right? So Myanmar national Pingnagdon, and this is her, Singapore, because a lot of people, people don't understand that Malaysia's a pretty big nation, but Singapore is actually, it was a port, and is actually really small for it to be its own country. It's very small, right? But it's very expensive. Very clean city, but it's very expensive. So Singapore, the housewife who repeatedly abused, starved, and killed her maid from Myanmar is seeking to have her most serious charge further reduced, according to the report by the Straits Times. I can't pronounce this woman's name, but this is her name. 41 has changed lawyers in a bid to avoid life imprisonment for her culpable homicide charge that the prosecution is seeking. The charge, which she admitted to on February, was previously reduced from murder. Apart from the culpable homicide, pleaded guilty to 27 other charges involving grievous hurt, wrongful restraint, and criminal intimidation. Another 87 related charges will be considered when she is sentenced at a later date. Her policeman husband, Kevin Shovlam, and mother, Prima S., I can't pronounce the name, are facing hurt-related charges which are pending before the courts. In July 2016, Peng, 24, died from a brain damage due to oxygen deprivation from being beaten, repeatedly choked, and weighed just about 24 kilograms at the time. A court heard on 23rd February. 24 kilograms is about 60 pounds for an adult. This is horrendous. This is horrendous. So this is a thing that has been going on for a while. And this is, this is Singapore, right? So this is in Asia. So people are not treating people right. So we just call this crime, right? We don't call this, they don't call it Asian on Asian crime, because when we do things in America, they call it black on black crime or anti-Asian or whatever. And then if you look into a lot of these attacks, because they do things too. And the reason why I'm showing you that they do things too is they're not this perpetual better class of people. Everybody, every vestiges of society have that vestige that abuse their power. And this is systemic within their society, right? And if you don't believe me that it's systemic in their society, then here we go. Now look at this. However, research estimates. So I'm going to bring this back a little bit. So because this is just these are slides and stuff like that.
Like this, you're treating like an animal.
So in 1978, the Foreign Domestic Servants Scheme was introduced. Okay. Making it easier for Singaporeans households to hire domestic help from neighboring countries. Pretty much in most of the neighboring countries, a third world country, Singapore is considered a first world country. Okay. I'm telling you, it's probably one of the cleanest first world cities you're gonna be in. It's clean as Singapore is clean. Clean. You know what I'm saying? It's a nice place to visit. I haven't lived there, but it's a nice place to visit. But you have all these surrounding third world countries where people go and incentivized to go to another country to make money to send it back home. Okay? Just, immigrants, right? Fast forward 50 years, there are now about 255,800 foreign domestic workers in Singapore. That's a lot of people. Okay? However, research estimates that around 60% are exploited by their employers. A number also suffer physical and psychological abuse. Here are some of the worst maid abuse cases in recent years. Hit with a hammer and stabbed with scissors. Over a period of 6 months in 2012, Khanifa, an Indonesian, endured physical abuse. At the hands of Zara Ali and her husband, Muhammad Dylan. Khanifa was hit with a hammer, a stone pestle, and a bamboo pole and stabbed in the arm with a pair of scissors. This left her with significant injuries, scarring, and disfigurement. She was also forbidden to call home or speak with neighbors. Whenever the couple had guests, Khanifa was forced to stay in the toilet. Khanifa was eventually sentenced, Zara was eventually sentenced to 11 years in jail, and her husband was jailed for 15 months. Forced to eat own vomit. For 11 months, Mo and Mo Than was tortured by her employers. The abuse only came to light after she reported it to her agent in Myanmar in November 2012. Now remember, what I just said about Myanmar earlier is that they had a ceasefire agreement back in 2012, when they were having their internal strife. That if they're having their internal strife, what's going to happen? These people are going to migrate out because they have to take care of their families and they are political refugees and stuff like that. And what happens with that is they're going to go where? They're going to go to whatever country that will take them by any means possible to seek a better life. According to the Maid, Cha and Ta force-fed her and made her eat her own vomit. On one occasion, she was forced to perform her chores in her underwear. On another occasion, she said the couple's other domestic workers were instructed to slap each other. Mo and Mo Than was also only allowed to use the toilet thrice or 3 times each day and not given sufficient food. The couple convicted and sentenced in 2017 and 2019 for the abuse of their other maid and Mo Than, respectively. Okay. So why am I bringing this up? Well, I'm bringing this up for the simple fact of the matter is, I'm bringing this up for the simple fact of the matter is that systemic problems happen to those who have privileges, right? That go unchecked, right? And these people went unchecked. Well, luckily the law is cracking down on them, right? Because why would that happen? Because people are not incentivized to come. But the cycle will repeat itself unless you deal with the systemic problem. Now, you're probably wondering what's going on with Singapore. But the thing is Singapore is like the United States, but in Asia, right? Singapore is an amalgamation of different races. If you're a Singaporean, you can be Chinese, you can be Thai, you can be anything, right? You can be Arabic, you can be whatever. Once you're born and raised in Singapore, you become a citizen of that nation. Singapore has a multicultural melting pot of culture in its own country. And what I mean by that is you can eat some Chinese food, some Thai food, some Indian food, an amalgamation of all of that, and some Filipino food, some Japanese food. It's amalgamation of all Asian cultures in one thing, and Arab cultures, right? So you have to understand that. So basically, Singapore is America Far East, and the reason why I bring this up is this is a systemic problem, and it doesn't matter if it's one group of people. This is a country systemic problem. If you look at it. In Ethiopia, I just read they're running up there, rounding up their minorities. So systemic racism or ethnically profiling people within a particular country that's your minority class is a thing that most countries are built on, especially when they want to be homogeneous within itself. Now, how did this happen? Because you incentivize people into bringing those people to said country to build it up, or you incentivize those people to come in on their own free will. Only once they get in there, you change it up because they've already moved and they have to deal with it. Okay, but that's just my thoughts on that. We're getting into our last thing. You know what I'm saying, at the top of the hour. So we're getting into our last thing, and we're going to talk about this crisis that's in India. The COVID surges have been ridiculous in India. They have surged out of control. And when I mean out of control, they have surged out of control. So I'm going to bring up this, and you're probably going to ask, well, what does this have to do with the thing? But I'm going to connect them all with my final thoughts so you can understand where we're going with this. Okay. So, COVID cases have spiked in India, right? And they have gone ridiculous. But did you know in the United States of America that every 7th doctor in the U.S. is Indian? And they are working as soldiers fighting COVID-19, right? So if every 7th doctor in the United States is Indian, right, from the nation of India or Indian descent, then Western world like England and the US and stuff like that and Europe, they get the best and the brightest. You incentivize those people, right, to come over to America because the American healthcare system is a capitalist thing. People in America pay more per capita for healthcare than anywhere else in the world. So that means the doctors are well paid, but they get the best research and they get the best equipment, right? Okay. Now, let me read this for you, right? So, governments across the world will have to lift shutdowns and reopen their economies in well-planned manner, or else the deadly coronavirus will return and the damage will be even worse. The president of the Indian origin U.S. physician organization has said, American Physicians of Indian Origin, they have their own society, AAPI, President Dr. Suresh Reddy, applauding the hundreds of thousands of Indian origin medical personnel bravely fighting against the virus, said that every seventh doctor in the U.S. is an Indian, and they are frontline workers as soldiers and fighting the virus. Okay? Now, if you take 10 doctors, that means if you count 1 through 7, by the time you get to the 7th doctor, there's an Indian doctor out of the 10. Right? So that's 1 out of every 10 doctors are from India. So if 1 in every 10 doctors are India, and we know the cost of living in the United States is way higher than India, that means that you have to make a substantial money to be in the United States. That means that the doctors don't get paid as well in India for being in India, but if they're really good, they can come to the United States. Then what does that say? And then they have a voice of saying, because they're the people that they're leaning to listen to with this. And then India did help produce a major material to ship to the United States, of course, with, you know, a trade agreement and stuff like that. Then India should be fine when it comes to COVID, right? Actually, no. Because if you have your best and your brightest leaving the country and they're not there, things like this will happen.
Outraged.
We are in a very dire situation.
Arpit Sharma, a business owner in New Delhi, just recovered from COVID after spending 3 nights at a local hospital, hooked to an oxygen tank.
There is no help, no.
Now, 3 nights. He recovered 3 nights after being hooked to an oxygen tank. Last time I checked, people was still on ventilators for a month or 2 afterwards if they recovered. 14 days once you get it. Why did they release this man after 3 days on a ventilator? He didn't recover. He's still in recovery. Just because he's not on the ventilator doesn't mean that he should be home, because he still has the virus. He's going to spread the virus, right?
No doctors, whether you have money, you don't have money, you're a VIP or not, nobody is getting treatments on time.
He's among the growing number of citizens who are blaming India's leadership for the record-breaking surge in cases, allowing super spreader events like religious festivals and campaign rallies to carry on.
Now you see this, right? But I just read an article about the Association of Indian Doctors basically giving their expertise, which is noted, of how the U.S. should handle, or how America or Western countries should handle dealing with the coronavirus. But their own homeland is suffering at an astronomical rate. And when I mean this, there are millions of people in different places getting this virus on a daily basis per place. It's ridiculous. If you go look it up, it's ridiculous. But why would this happen? What is this? What I'm basically saying is the systemic things, right? Because systemic racism can work on the other end of its head. You can incentivize this group of people to come while you push down this group of people. So are you now, if you incentivize this group of people to come to your country, you're taking the best and the brightest, you're taking these refugees and you put them in this amalgamation, but the people that are citizens in your country that's never been incentivized to be there in the first place, if you keep pushing them down and you're now getting the police reform and you're now doing this, what is going on? Because now those best and those brightest people, they can't go help the people from their own nation, right? Because they're incentivized to be cut off from their nation to be where they are. Systemic racism or anything of that, or systemic, judging people by their ethnicity or whatever it is, or culture or whatever, this is a tool used in society to keep a hierarchy. to keep a hierarchy. What's going on, sis? What's going on, boy to Kel? But let me play this.
What is your message to the government right now?
I think the government should completely shut down all events, all political campaigns, everything what they're doing, and focus on healthcare, focus on basic healthcare.
Only until cases started to soar did the Indian government fast-track approval of foreign vaccines like Moderna and Pfizer, but leaving it up to the individual states to purchase the vaccine, while its domestic manufacturers, Serum Institute and Bharat Biotech, tried to ramp up supply. Less than 2% of the population is fully vaccinated.
There is no doubt in my mind that this government was woefully unprepared for this crisis.
Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi facing criticism over his response, but his approval rating has only fallen slightly to 70% in recent weeks.
His popularity is going to take a hit. I mean, the extent of urban and middle-class anger we're seeing right now in India, we have not seen in the 7 years that Modi has been in power.
So, with that being said is, now you see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to get into my final thoughts here. What I basically was trying to do, and to bring this in an amalgamation, is that the things that you've been told in the news about the Asian this and the Asian that, and systemic racism doesn't exist, but you just passed a bill about anti-Asian sentiment. But for black people, it doesn't exist. But for these people, it does exist. Where that this is affecting, so that means that you incentivize a certain group of people to come to America. Now, Indians are considered Asians, right? So what I'm basically saying is this, is that you can't say one thing out of the side of your head and then come with another thing on the other end of the spectrum. And you can't have a system that works this well without everyone participating in the system. Okay? If I want someone to stay somewhere, I need to incentivize them to stay. Okay? If I need this as a nation, if I don't feel like I need these people, then these things will happen. India is a very overpopulated, very crowded place. They have a very bad infrastructure, right? And what I mean the very bad infrastructure, they're running out of oxygen. The UK had to send over oxygen. I just saw in the news that people are robbing the oxygen trucks. Well, people will do that when they're in need, if they're not getting what they need when they need it, right? But if you're telling me, and I didn't even look up the engineers, and I didn't even look up the architects and things of that nature, the people that's in mathematics. What's going on, Cerulean? So Cerulean says, nobody told India to pull itself up by its own bootstraps, do for self, stop asking for vaccine handouts, get off American welfare, stop depending on the welfare state. Hold thine own nuts. Exactly. Thank you for saying that, Cerulean. And that's what I mean. There has to be a two-way street with this, right? This systemic racism, or this systemic ethnic cleansing, or however way you want to hear it, however way you want to say it, these are the things that are going on. So when you keep seeing this anti-Asian thing, yes, that is happening. But you can't say that people are discriminating against Asians and not saying, and it's systemic, but when it comes to black people, it's not systemic. That does not make sense, because the very basis of the legislation that you brought to pass it through the House for the Asian community or any community was based off the very thing that black people have been fighting for 400 years. And I'm talking about this in America. But the thing is, and I'm going to keep saying this again, black people, we are American. The reason why these other groups of people are incentivized, you're going to see a rise in the next couple of years of Southeast Asians immigrating into a city near you. So this is to desensitize or to subvert the majority or the population to accepting the Asians, but to desensitize them on accepting the plight of black people, because black people are American citizens. This country, America, was built on immigration. Send the tenants, bring me, you're hungry, you're sick, or whatever, right? We're the only group of people that weren't incentivized to come to America. And I keep saying that. But you are an American citizen because off of your backs or off of your forefathers' backs and off of your backs because you're tax-paying citizens, you are an American. And when are you going to stand up and fight for your right as an American citizen that America needs to come first before we keep inviting any more people into our struggles or into our plights or into our fight for civil rights and justice? Does systemic racism exist? Yes, it does. The very people that tell you that it doesn't are the very people that will tell you about it somewhere else, because if it exists over here, it'll exist over here, and this country was built upon it. Now, I have nothing against the Asian folk. I have nothing against it or whatever, but the plight that they're in is because they incentivize sending their people away to another country, and when they need those bright minds, they don't have them. When they need that leadership, they don't have them. They don't have the advisors. They don't have the infrastructure. You have the biggest and brightest minds in America. You have every seventh doctor is of Indian descent from India. Matter of fact, the vice president of the United States has Indian descent in her. It's mind-boggling, right? So these Indian doctors have all of this knowledge when they're talking in America, but why not about the people from their homeland? Oh, because they see themselves as American, because they have been incentivized to do so. So how do you incentivize America to incentivize you? Now that's a question, and we always looking for solutions. So we have to be the best that we can be every day. We have to treat each other with the modicum of respect. We have to be noble in all of our actions and everything we do. And we have to be noble in how we carry ourselves. And we have to be noble in how we deal with each other in public. We have to show some decency and decorum. We have to give each other the benefit of the doubt to a certain degree. And we actually have to hold each other accountable. But I appreciate everybody being here today. I'm gonna ask the chat how many likes do we got? Because the last one we were sitting on 12. So how many likes do we have? You know what I'm saying, on the stream? I know this was a little bit more egg-headed and stuff, but this is the direction that I want to go when I do the show. I want it to be informative. I want it to be entertaining. But I want you to basically learn something. That gut feeling that you had where you didn't think that something wasn't right with just pushing this narrative of these poor Asians being accosted and beaten down. So it didn't feel right because they're never really in the news about anything, you know, then did it happen? Yes. Is it happening as frequently as you would like it to? No. So why are they doing it? Because they want to incentivize it in it, because there's a lot of trade agreements going on, and we are a global economy now. We're not isolated, none of that. And Asia is the manufacturing plant. They are the cheap labor. They are the cheap goods and services, all of that. No one's going back to working in the factory for 9 to 5 with no benefits and no pension. I know that's Char's favorite word, but no one's going in the textile factory. The industrial age is over. We're in the technological age. And what this coronavirus has done is it has separated, where the second and third world country were kind of on the heels of the first world country. Now it has put a big gap in between. And don't think that this isn't by design, why they keep opening and closing things and making this virus spread even more and coming up with certain things. So we got 13, the baker's dozen. So I'm going to hit you with, I'm going to do a couple of these. Turner. 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 So I'm going to do a couple of those. Appreciate every last one of you for showing up. I'd like to thank everybody for coming through today, supporting the stream. Thank you very much. Next week, next Thursday is the first Thursday of the month, and we're going to be doing a session. It's just going to be a free-for-all. It's going to be a free-for-all. So come through and enjoy yourself. You know what I'm saying? If you want to jump on the panel, we'll just talk about anything. Sometimes we need to get off being so serious and just kick our feet up. I'd like to do some interviews soon. Interview some people and just kick it. I'll probably reach out to somebody, maybe have a special guest to come on and do an interview where we just chop it up and have a good time, and not be on here but so long. 3 hours is the max. But appreciate every last one of you. Thank you. You could be anywhere, but you came here to be with me. Salute to the nation. Salute to the black nobility. Ebon Noblesse. No one's going to beg you to be great, but we will hold you accountable. So I'm going to leave you out. We're going to leave you out with the goodbye song. And y'all have a lovely evening and a good day.
I never think, I never know. I'm stuck and left alone. I've been lost, I've been fine. My cause is not defined. Won't you